allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call this meeting to order. Our first item is budget discussion on our workshop presentation. Mrs. Towers.
Good evening, Dr. Salins, President Smith, board members. Tonight we bring before you presentation preliminary of our budget workshop for the operating budget. If we take a look, our budget initiatives are to maximize achievement for all students, effective recruitment, development, training, and retention of staff, create and sustain a school climate conducive to the safety and security of students and staff, involvement of all stakeholders in communication, information, and policy matters, and to acquire resources necessary to achieve the priorities and mission of Queen Anne's County Public Schools. The first thing we'd like to discuss with you is our FY23, what we're hearing from the state as far as the state aid. Currently, all we have available is our legislative projections. There are no draft numbers released yet from the state. The legislative projections are based upon the 9/30/19 enrollment numbers. So you can see it's based upon 7,505 students, which would be an increase over last year of 4.4 with the blueprint funds.
Is that 4.4 state money?
Correct.
And county?
Just state,
Just state, so the county then would be,
yes,
they have additional money that would be owed.
correct. So our, just information, our 9/30/21 count enrollment was 7,124. So you can see that was a decrease of 381 students. Just as we have discussed before, enrollment has decreased across the state with almost all but one of the districts, is what I'm hearing. The state aid numbers, the calculation is changing. We have not been given what the calculation is going to entail, just that we know it is going to include enrollment. The next item here under state aid, so our main funding sources is state aid, and then you have county. So county is under maintenance of effort. So our maintenance of effort calculation is going to be updated, what we're being told. It has not been released yet either. The legislative projection has it again at the 7,500 students, which shows an increase on the county end of 1.4.
Right now.
So we're actually in limbo at this point until we get a copy of those state aid numbers and then the calculation for maintenance of effort. We are being told, the CFO group, they're going to do a presentation on January 27th and have that information in draft form to us, so we have an idea of what our revenue will look like. Just something that we are hearing too, just to let you know, is that if the state aid numbers are based upon our 9/30/21, the governor does have an option to include a hold harmless grant. Now, the hold harmless grant has been in effect for several years. However, with the blueprint, it was supposed to be phased out in '23. He can include it in his budget, and it is slated to be released, his budget, on January 19th. So I'm just going to, as Dr. Kibler has talked about with the blueprint funding, the blueprint funding is the intent for funding on the state level is to enhance the quality of and diverse teachers. Their focus on the blueprint funding is high quality, diverse teachers. The state's position that we were told on the 17th is that support for our administrators and support groups as far as salary enhancements would have to come from the local level, is what we were being told. So when we, just a brief overview, when we look towards the blueprint mandates in '23, and these are by no means all the ones that are going to be mandated, these are just the ones that really want to get on our radar, is for '23, the National Board Certification for Teachers, That's going to be the 10,000. As far as what the state is going to offer, is what we're hearing is 5,000, but then there's going to be a wealth calculation. So we could see less than 5,000 of that 10,000.
Is this a yearly certification?
Yes.
And it costs 10,000 every year?
As long as they maintain.
There's its active status. The next thing to put on our radar for '23 is we have to take a look at salary increases. By law, we are required to have 10% from 2019 to '24 an increase. And only thing that the state has told us that counts is your cost of a living adjustments, your COLAs. Your steps from 19 through current do not count. So to date, we are at 3%.
But if we had counted steps, we'd have been a lot higher.
Yes, we would have been over the 10%, correct. And then the next thing is that we're looking ahead in '23 would be transitioning from pre-K half-day to full day.
Now, besides staffing, do we have the facilities to do that?
Defer to Mr. Pender.
At a few of our schools, we could make it work. At one school in particular, it would be very tough. That school is pretty much maximized out on the space utilized there with the current grades they have in it.
Millersville?
Centerville Elementary.
Just, I mean, yeah, because it's close to 500 or something.
Yes, sir.
So then, what's the
You'd
idea
have to
back
bring
in on that?
in, you would have to bring in modulars. Portables.
Just like at
For others,
Leanne's
for other
high
students,
school.
but the pre-K would probably stay in school.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Building, but I'd bring modulars in to put,
You would take like the second grade and move second grade outside and keep the younger ones within the building.
And like I said, this is by no means all the different mandates. These are the ones that are just as far as major dollar amounts
Right.
that really want to focus on. Dr. Kibler has a group as far as a pre-K group that are looking at all the other mandates that are associated with it. But this is just kind of like an overall of what we're looking at in '23 then. The next thing is really want to talk about the budget process this year.
Yeah.
Dr. Salem?
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and jump in here, just so that the board understands the whole process. So we sent out to, Jane actually sent out to all of those that are involved in building the budget, and said, we'd like for you to share with us what your needs are. And so they put in 3 requests. Now, these are things that are over and above our current operating budget, so that's really important to know. So the regular things that we do every year that are just incorporated and have line items in the budget, this is over and above that. So we had 425 new requests. That was a total of $18.9 million. And so then the budget team got together and really parsed those out and sorted them by color. And those categories were what would need to go into next year's budget. So it would need to create a line item for it or increase a line item for it. What would be a wish list that if we did get additional monies over and above, how could, we address, what would we address there? Some things, and it was a short list, but some things we felt like, oh, this is immediate. We need to do this now because for various reasons. Some things we categorized as purchasing with year-end funds. So if we allocate a budget every year, obviously, and if we have a year where maybe we don't have as much snow removal or don't use as much energy, or this year we're not having as many substitutes. So we have a line item for substitutes, but then we'll have money left over in that line item. What can we do with those monies at the end of the year that'll be just one-time cost things? Of course, they couldn't be staffing because we wouldn't be able to sustain that. Since this was the first time this budget team got together, and we do have several new people, even in the schools, new principals, what was currently already incorporated in the operating budget that they just didn't know. It was already there and they just weren't identified that it was there. And then some non-recurring costs, which are costs that we can ask for over and above for one-time projects. And these are big things, like where you replace like a computer lab or
Playground equipment.
Playground equipment, which is a big one, equipment in and of itself. And then a category which really was very minimum that had, this just isn't, it either didn't align with what our district initiatives and goals and missions are, or it wasn't feasible for us to do it. So that went into the non-funded. So this process took us several weeks and several meetings to get through, especially being a new team and attacking this budget and trying to really look for actuals in there. So concluding that, we went to a budget roundtable where everyone, again, who has their hand in the budget comes together and meets. And we invited Mr. Smith and also one of our commissioners to come together with us, just so they could really listen and understand. So everyone on the team, meaning all of your administrators, so all of your principals, all your supervisors, they all sat and they provided what their priorities would be within why their budget requests were of need. And then we went back around and said, if you had kind of the keys to the kingdom, as they say, and you had a limited budget source, whose priority would you pick? And so we went through that process, and as a result of that, the top 3 priorities ended up to be school guidance counselors as it relates to the mental well-being of our students and to do wraparound services and provide supports for our students. EL teachers, because of the growth in that population, to be able to meet their needs, and then to meet a state requirement, PE and health teachers. So that's kind of a non-funded mandate that's coming down from the state. So those were the top 3 priorities. And I want to take note to this, that you'll notice that those are all people and resources to address our students. So everything that was facilities, right, got dropped off. And that, I think, has been a pattern in the district for some time. And as a result of that, we see some big needs there. So I don't want that to get lost in the shuffle. We do know that staffing was a #1 priority, but I certainly don't want the others to get lost in the shuffle. So we also recognized, following that budget roundtable, that we needed to really do some realignment because some things have fallen off the plate and haven't been, every year I think they're brought to the table, but then you only have so much money, so they get cut from it. And that is curriculum writing, so professional development basically for staff, textbooks and consumable type. So we have textbooks that are out there that are much older than they should be, need to be replenished, and they were likely on the budget several years in a row, but as budget got tighter and tighter, they got cut off. Moving to a laptop leasing so that we have better control over that. And then that painting piece, that has been left off year after year, and we're starting to see that in the schools. So these are just some things that we really needed to realign to make sure that they get back into the budget, into our operating budget, and aren't cut from the budget because we lack the funds to be able to balance our budget, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Why is laptop leasing not in the operating budget? I mean, we are giving children laptops to take home, and we
Yes.
know how children are, so.
Right. So we purchase them before outright purchase them, and
Right.
this gives us the ability to create a line item so that it doesn't hit the budget all at one time. So for instance, you can go and try to replace X amount that costs you $500,000, or you can lease them and pay over time. And so that's really, it's just a way to minimize the impact on the budget in a single year.
I guess my confusion is I thought we had already done that, because initially, when my daughter was in middle school, they purchased all of the Chromebooks and gave them out. We had no sparing, no support, nothing. We had some extra money. We bought all these laptops, we gave them to the kids. I thought that we had gotten to a point where we had set up, because I did a little research, I was asked to do that. I went to several of the different counties and how they were doing it. Most kids, a lot of counties do a 1-for-1, but they don't let the kids take them home. They have to use them in school. COVID's a whole nother different story. But I thought we had gotten to a point where we were doing a 3-year lease, where every 3 years, we were going through and cycling out the older ones and updating them and keeping it going. That helped with, fixing them if they got broken, replacing them. And then that also gave us the staff, the company that we were buying them from, to support it, because we were using like librarians to do the support. This is near and dear to my heart. It's what I do for a living, so it's,
This is, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, but this is more of a leasing option to own as opposed to a leasing like you would for,
continual.
yeah, yeah. So like for instance, we're moving right now to work with a company to be able to lease vehicles so that we don't buy a maintenance vehicle and have it for 10 years where we're putting all this into it. That would be a lease where it would be 18 months to 2 years based on mileage and things like that, where then we would get a new one, we sell that one for fair market value. And this, I believe, is more of that lease to own.
Right,
a
and,
trade-in.
and some things need to be in the operating budget, and where there was different funding sources in prior years, that the funding source going forward would come from operating funds. Now, in the past, we've used ESSER. ESSER 1, I think, purchased grades 3 through 5 laptops. So as those opportunities come up and different funding sources, but going forward, we need to transition into having a line item in our operating budget for that. Where in prior years, it was other funding sources.
So the word leasing there is maybe misleading. Yeah, maybe it's misleading, but I do understand your point, and I don't believe that that's what we're doing at this point.
Right, we
And so
are,
It-
Yeah, go ahead, Sid,
Okay.
because you have.
Th-
that
There is
information
a, there is a cycle of replacement. Some were purchased just, outright out of capital.
Right.
And then some were purchased, on an installment plan of payments. Sometimes when we use the word lease, you're thinking, okay, I'm just keeping it for, 2-3 years.
Right.
Right.
But basically, at least to own is what it was. And there is a cycle of, don't quote me on this, but elementary would go through a couple years, it'd be replaced, high school, same thing, then teachers. So Josh in technology has a plan for all of those replacement cycles. It's just that the money coming, where it was coming from was out of capital, and there's no guarantee on capital every year that you're going to get. So if you put it in the operating budget, you're locked into it every year to keep on going, which is the way to go.
And the county commissioners funded it that way from the beginning.
Yes, you're correct.
Yes,
Yes,
from 2015, that's how far back that started.
Right.
When your daughter was there.
that's correct.
And I
She's
think,
one of the
Jane,
first ones
Yeah.
that got them.
I think we met with the commissioners yesterday, and government accounting, certain things can be done in operating, certain things can be done in capital. And we have to make sure those are in the proper groups. So some of the things that probably in the past that were maybe in capital really should be operating line item, depending on the longevity and depreciation schedule. And I think that's come up to make sure we're lined up properly. And the county this year, capital budget was very favorable to us because we didn't use some of it because it was supposed to be in another category, and we're readjusting that. But, it's like painting. I mean, we got to understand, when you build a school, I don't know what said, 10 years you need to repaint it or something, or 5?
We try to put them on about a 7 to 8 year cycle.
7, 8 year.
That's
And then
about,
you have furniture. I think that's been a big thing with one.
Yes.
I remember at the round table, I got to give
Cafeteria tables.
the principal
Yeah.
credit. He brought a desk with him that wasn't
And the
usable.
chair,
And
yeah.
a chair. So, it's things like that it's easy to take out when we're doing everything else. But, it's the county. The county has 550 miles of roads. If they don't do 50 miles a year, doing them, they're going to, all of a sudden, one year, have big, major problems. And that's what we have to look at, as both capital and as a 5-year plan, probably, in our reoccurring costs. That I think, we want to take care of our people, we want to take care of our staff, we want to take care of all our needs. And then all of a sudden, well, we don't need this, that gets put to the side, and it bites you, and it's biting us.
That's true, and that's why leasing's so favorable, because you don't get that hit all at once, that you can spread it over a timeframe, which would be advantageous and a lot easier for us to budget.
How many square feet of buildings do we have, Sid?
1.4 million.
1.4 million. All of them have a roof on them.
Sure.
All of them need the floors taken care of,
All
But
have walls that
the
need to
thing
be
about it,
painted.
if you think about it,
and they're used all day.
oh yeah, they're used all day, all weekend, in normal times, all evening. But if you think about it, except for Centerville Middle School, our major construction as far as, building a new school or renovating one is done. It's our job now to maintain them for the next 30 to 40 years. you know, and if you, I try to tell this to people, yeah, your door, you might have 4 people to live in your family. They may go out that door 10 times. You think about 1,200 kids at the high school every single day, back and forth. And, you know, the budget is just not there to, you know, replace it. I mean, literally, when I'm looking at replacing 2 water softeners, we have 2 well waters at, one at Churchill, one at Sellersville Elementary School, $9,000 a piece. Like, I'm looking at it going, okay, that's $9,000. Where am I going to pull that from? You know, I mean, but those are the times that we're in right now. Like I said, we're past that new construction. It's to maintain the facilities.
Once we build a building, I mean, really, with 1.4 million square feet, we need to have some kind of thing saying, okay, some of this is new and some of it's 5, 10, 20 years old. It's gonna come, I mean, it's like your car. You gotta maintain it. I mean, and if you don't, it's gonna,
Well, just like playgrounds, you know, there's a longevity on playground, and it's very strict guidelines of when it needs to be replaced. You know, just things like that you don't really think about, and then until it's gone, and then all of a sudden it's an issue, and where are we going to find the money? And technology, just like phone systems and PAs, they don't last like they used to.
I mean, we've seen that in the last couple meetings with securities and your cameras in your high schools. It's in 5 years, you can't even get parts for them in there at some point.
That's right.
Well, the small, I know this is not much on the revenue side, but I know that we were working on a policy about when people rent the spaces here. It was very, it was haphazard, we weren't really collecting, it was not very much money, and for a heavy use, you know, it does work on our buildings to have people in them, using them like that. And I know we were trying to revamp that and make it consistent and make it, so are we still, are we?
I'm going to
I
have to
know
look
it's
into
re-
that because I don't know the answer to that.
We're-
I apologize.
Is that like when you're talking about when we have the,
When groups
Either
rent it,
Group
So-
rent
a
out.
church
because like they were
or a,
doing, there's like the one group that was doing driver's ed,
So,
and then there was a couple other things
yeah,
that were
and,
being.
yeah, right.
But with
and-
COVID, we haven't been renting out.
no, but
Right.
I'll say this, years ago when I got introduced to the building usage part, it was very, very haphazard.
Yes.
You know, this person used it because they were a former teacher and, hey, we're not going to charge them. But I would say for the past 6 or 7 years,
Things got damaged.
there's the amount of revenue coming in from people using our buildings has jumped up because everybody is now following the same procedures when before they weren't. Parks and Rec does pay an annual fee to use our buildings. We were losing, and I'm not exaggerating, probably $200,000, $300,000 a year just in energy fees because when a church comes in to use Kent Island High School, I just can't turn it on and let it run. I mean, I got to bring it on 3 or 4 hours ahead of time to get to that point. Well, you know, we went through and we calculated, okay, it's $125 for that chiller to run for per hour. And then it really started opening up. We had, you know, people using the building that there was no custodian. So then all of a sudden something's missing and there's a blame game going back and forth. So, I mean, Jane can probably pull the numbers for you, but
Oh,
up
no, you
until
don't have to look
COVID,
at
it's
that.
really
I just know we were
gone up.
working on it because it seemed to be everyone, it wasn't consistent. And it wasn't enough because of those issues. And so it just seemed like they were really on the right track to just revamp it, increase the amounts of money charged, you know, to put in place contingencies for something was damaged and all of those items. So I know it's been really busy, but
So is your point to bring it back or to
well,
just
to
understand
increase
it?
the number of how much is charged, to make it consistent based on your, as Sid was saying, it was haphazard. It would be, depending on the type of group, they didn't have to pay very much. But the bottom line is our fees, our costs are the same, no matter what the group is. So it just could be that we need to look at all the groups need to pay the same amount, or we're losing money.
So your point is to bring it back?
Yes.
Something that we do in our schools?
Yes, if we're, yes. To be
And make it
consistent. I
standard.
mean, I know we were just working on the
That's- yeah.
policy.
Look
No,
into
that's
it
fine.
and see where we
Yeah, the
are.
policy wasn't really clear either, I think. I know, Towers, you were on that with us, and
Right.
is that what you guys got from it?
Right, I believe the facility planner had brought it to the policy committee meeting, yes, to discuss it, yes.
I mean, these are public buildings paid by taxpayers. So I think they should be utilized when we can, but I think, like Helen says, it should be fair, that we need to know our cost. And if it costs $500 an hour to operate a building with a janitor and heat it, then that's what the cost is, or it is a flat fee and something, I mean,
You start talking water sewer fees, you start talking consumables, toilet paper, soap and all that. I mean, you don't think about it, but I mean, if you have a church using it every single Sunday and there's 200 people attending that church, that starts to add up over time. And then that's when we started charging them for, that, not so that we were necessarily making money, but so we were kind of like breaking even because the taxpayers, they do put money into the buildings and all that. But there for a while, yes, it was, I wasn't a fan favorite, but just trying to make it
I
equal.
think we need to be fair, because there's a fixed cost to operate the building no matter what, but then there's an external cost if you sit there and going to operate them at a longer time, a day or something, and it costs money. And the reason they're using it is probably because they're reasonable.
Yes.
So many
There's
things.
not
that we
really
use.
anywhere else to go in the county. I
Yeah,
mean,
and it's a small county, and you're right, there's not a lot of public buildings and, okay.
So as we're building the budget here, the things that really are coming to light that want to focus your attention on to let you know is that definitely we'll have the salary enhancement placeholder, some of the blueprint initiatives. The healthcare is projected to go up to 5%, and that is going to be a placeholder for that. Currently, it was at 11.7, but they have, the ESMIC Healthcare Trust has done some different types of initiatives where it doesn't affect the members and their premiums, it doesn't affect the quality of care. So we're looking at up to 5%. They have to project out almost a year ahead of time. We'll know in the end of February a more accurate number, but we're being told that it could be up to 5%.
And we paid a majority of that.
It would be the 5% for us. Yes. And then also want to put on the radar too, that there is hourly wage adjustments for minimum wage. The minimum wage rate has gone up. So each year we make an allowance for that. So the progression so far with the budget, the 23 budget is in November. That's when we reached out, like Dr. Salen said, requested from schools what their needs are, really to dive in to see what is needed in each building and as well as in each department. In December, the funding requests were reviewed and sorted by the executive team as Dr. Salins broke out the categories. On the 17th, you had your roundtable meeting. In January, the budget survey has now been issued and released. The results will be presented at the 19th board work section. On February 9th, the capital budget will be presented as well as the operating budget summary. And then in March, the superintendent's budget presentation.
How is the survey going? Have we
We
had
had
a
about
sense?
1,400 responses to date.
That's great.
And about 75% of those are not staff. So that would be parents, community, a very small percentage of community. I think that might have been 5%. Don't quote me exactly on that, but it was definitely less than 10%.
Right.
So the majority really are parents have been responding. Yeah.
Great. That's a good turnout.
You know, every year we've been through this, and it's a challenging thing. This is no exception with, what's going on with COVID. And I think we just need to be, besides looking at this budget, we have to make sure we're sustainable, because there's a lot of moving parts in this thing. And, I think we've done a good job. Some places we haven't, but we need to sit there and make sure that this is sustainable, because, it's changing. And a couple of things, the state comes by, and there's never a funded mandate. Whenever you hear mandate, it's costing money. And it's never, ever, and especially in our county, which we are 45, 65 or something? I mean, it's not like we're a county that gets 80% funding.
Correct.
From the state.
Correct. And really, the initiative that we're seeing on the state level that they're pushing, I don't know if pushing is the right word, but to the local level is they don't recognize steps anymore. So we have, and going back to that 10%, we had some counties that wanted to include not only their steps and when meeting with the legislation, but they wanted to include the missteps that they actually credit their employees during that fiscal year 19 through 24. And the state said, absolutely not. They don't see steps anymore. They are focused solely on the career ladder.
But steps were a major part of salary increases to teachers.
Yes.
And the state's now saying, we're not going to consider that does count as part of your thing, so,
Kerwin,
Kerwin.
it's part of the law. It's written.
so we have
in
no
the-
choice
the
there,
plan.
but
You don't have.
we can't address it because it's not there. Or, it's not going to be counted. What about our federal budget as far as low and, free and reduced lunches? How's that going?
It was extended through this year through USDA. I haven't heard anything about 23 yet. They haven't mentioned that, is if it would be extended again to all for free.
Well, what my question is, and I think Dr. Salins has mentioned, people aren't signing up for it.
No.
Because it's free to everybody, so why, if it's free, why do I want to sign up? Or any of us want to sign up because you're already going to get it. But if we don't do it, some of our schools, that we have a couple schools that are more heavily involved than others, what are we going to do about that if all of a sudden, there's going to be, are they looking into that? That bothers me as much as this rolling hours for enrollment.
So what you'll see then in FY '23 is the free and reduced meal applications. They'll have the opportunity to actually apply for it by, I believe it's October 30th, then so that they will receive free or reduced meals. So they'll have the opportunity to receive it in FY '23.
We have to do a good PR, not a PR, but make sure that people that need free and reduced lunches sign up for it, because
It's going away.
But point well taken, that we are down in our enrollment for that, and that is used as part of some of the
But a lot of
formulas to be able to give us money.
Right.
Correct. I was
But for
thinking
grants and stuff,
service-related, yes.
Right, so that, they use a wealth-based calculation, they also use free and reduced
What-
calculation, and they use enrollment. So when you look at those three formulas, for lack of better words, those are all calculations on how we receive funding, and point well taken that we definitely have a decrease in our overall farms because it's free to everyone right now, and that could potentially impact our overall budget for next year.
because every time I see a grant come in, especially like for Sumnersville or possibly Graysonville, it's nice to get this stuff. But if we don't have the numbers, which we don't now, it's, we have the numbers, but they're not being reported because of, it's not,
Right.
that's something I think we need to keep a,
And that's a very good point. It does tie to the operating budget. And it's across the state then too, is that they're saying that it's not just Queen Anne's. a state
I know, but
issue.
what scares
We're
me,
talking with the state, they understand this issue, do they? I mean, I'm sure
That's
they're
federal,
from
yeah,
us,
but-
right?
They do. The CFOs have been a very loud voice at the table with 100% support from superintendents. So it's been loud and clear over and over and month after month, to be honest with you. And because we all know that it's going to negatively impact our budgets across the state of Maryland. And as I said, we're talking big bucks that impact school systems where you have to cut positions. You have no choice if you don't have the budget. You cut positions, unfortunately.
no, that's what we've had to, not this, but, to make things work. What's it, 86% of our budget is salaries.
Yeah.
And benefits. So, when you sit there and give us some of these numbers, that they're nice numbers, but, when you talk, it sounds like $1 million, $2 million, $4 million, bam,
not a
it's
whole lot
gone,
of
it's
money,
gone in a
right,
whole,
when you have-
it's
yeah.
gone just by certain things we're committed to anyway.
Exactly.
If we're going to be committed to that, and some of the stuff's mandated.
Correct. So with some key dates in January that we're going to be keeping an eye on is the governor's budget release to see if there's that hold harmless grant for '23.
So we might know that next, we have a meeting next
On the
Wednesday.
19th, yeah.
The 19th, so
It's
you might
supposed
have.
to drop on the 19th itself, so we might just have it hot off the press, to be honest with you.
Keep reading.
Yeah, hopeful
Okay.
for that. And we should have some of the other revenue calculations by the end of the month. So for the February board meeting, we should at least be able to share out some information there, those numbers.
And we're working on our capital budget, that's being done, so,
Yes.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Towers.
Okay, any further discussion on the budget? Anybody have any questions while we're here? Okay, we will have our regular work session will be next, the 19th, the next Wednesday. Then our regular meeting will be February the 2nd, followed by another budget work session on the 9th, and our regular scheduled work session on the 16th. So, have any further discussion by board?
Motion
Anybody want to make a motion to?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you.
Thank you.